Hey, what's up survivors? In this video I'm going to show you guys how to set up DaemonForge's Universal API and MapLink mod so that you can hive your servers and have multiple maps where your character can jump between maps. Now I've spent the past day or two trying to get this working. There's no guides out there at all. Even in the DaemonForge Discord there's barely any information. I had to read through months worth of conversations to figure this thing out. And I finally figured it out, and I figure I might as well be the one to put a guide together. So that's what this will be. Before we start, I have modified DaemonForge's codebase, and I've got my own version on the workshop that you can download. It's all open source, so I'm pretty sure DaemonForge gives permission to do that as long as you follow his licensing rules and keep everything open source, which is great. I love that. That's how all my mods are managed as well. So my version of his mod fixes a shitload of errors in the error logs and dozens and dozens of bad hard refs. So there's a few coding practices DaemonForge used on this old mod. It's quite an old mod now. And a lot of these coding practices are not good. You're not supposed to do a lot of things that this mod does in terms of, particularly in terms of hard refs. If you don't know what a hard ref is, don't worry about it. Just make sure you download my version of the mod. It will be much more stable than the original version. And I also fixed a few bugs. I fixed a bug with community online tools, admin mode not working. There is the chance that my changes may have introduced some edge case bugs in the mod. I haven't tested everything. I haven't done the Discord. I haven't connected the Discord aspect of this service, but I have got MapLink working. And that's the main focus of this guide and my version of the mod. So download my version of the mod. It will have everything fixed. It will even have string tables for all of the different languages, which the original mod lacks. So if you're not running this on an English speaking server, you can run my version of the mod and it will have rough translations for everything. Links for all of this will be below in the pinned comment and in the video description. So I'm not going to go over installing the Universal Web API and MongoDB database manager, because DaemonForge already has a video here that's pretty extensive that goes over all of that. Nothing has changed, so I'll link to this below as well. And I'll jump straight in, assuming you've got this software installed and you've got Mongo database installed, following this guide, and then we'll start from there. That'll save some time. So first of all, I'm going to do this on experimental, 1.28 experimental, just because I happen to be working on that branch right now with my custom mods to update everything. This will work just the same on a normal server. I'll show you how to do this on your local server first on your PC, and then I'll show you how to set it up on CF Tools or CF Cloud on a dedicated server. The steps are pretty much the same, but let's start with getting it working on our local server so that we can actually test some stuff and see how our mods compatibility works with everything. This isn't going to be compatible with quite a few mods on the workshop, like expansion, spawn selector in particular. Anything that messes with spawns is not going to work. I did read in the Discord something about LB Master's spawn selector working with this mod, but pretty much all the other spawn adjusting mods won't work with this mod. There will be some compatibility issues with mods like Siberia, the Siberia project. Anything that adds custom stats to your character, you'll need to be pretty experienced with coding to know what to do here. So if I go into the MapLink code and we go to player data store, I believe. Anyway, somewhere in these files, when you swap servers or swap maps, which in turn swaps servers, there's a bunch of stats that will not get carried over if they're modded stats. You'll need to come in and add those modded stats into this code yourself. So if you're going to run this mod on a heavily modded server, you really need to know what you're doing. But if you're running a mostly vanilla server or something with just cosmetic mods, clothing mods, that sort of thing, then this should be just fine. So let's get started. Once you've installed the Universal API and the Mongo database, there will be shortcuts placed on your desktop. Just double click this to run the Universal API. It will listen on port 443 by default and should be up to date, assuming you've downloaded the latest version from here. Just to show you how to do that, on the DaemonForge GitHub, come to releases, and you need to download this file here. Don't worry about the source code for everything. Again, use my source code. My source base will be much more stable than the original. I haven't really changed anything. I've only reformatted the code to make it more readable, because I don't know what DaemonForge does when he codes, but his code looked like he used min.js on it to shrink the file size by removing all the spaces in his code and text. I couldn't read the code. I had to spend an hour going through and reformatting everything. But as for the Universal API software, you need to download that from here. This is like a backend database. This will manage the database between all of your servers, because your servers, if I go into my Steam folder, if I have multiple servers in a folder here, they can't speak to each other. I can't check what the player was wearing or what his stats were on a different server in a different folder. This database bridges all of those servers together so that when your server loads up, it uses the inbuilt DayZ API, REST API, to request that information between servers. So that's why we need all of this set up in order to run a mod like MapLink. All right, so now that we've got this working, before we do anything, we need to run the server with the MapLink mod added. So add my MapLink mod. I've just got a really basic batch file here to start my server with my MapLink mod added. Once I run my server with those mods, with that mod added, I've got VPP admin tools and community framework added as well. They're the only mods I'm running, and MapLink. Once I boot up my server, after a couple of seconds, we'll get a UAPI folder generated in the profiles folder. We need to go into here and we need to open this file. I'll bring this over. The things we need to focus on are our server URL. So by default, that's going to be HTTPS 127.0.1 on a local server. So make sure to put your server URL in there. If you're running this on a dedicated machine, you'll put your dedicated machine server in there. Then we need a server ID. This is like a name for your server. So I'm going to link Zenarchist with Livonia here. So I'll name this server, the first server, Zenarchist. The last thing we need to edit is our server auth. So to find that, we need to click on this little drop-down box, go to system config. That is this setting here. So we need to copy this, paste it in there, save our file, shut down our server. Now to make sure this is working properly, we need to restart our server and bring this up, click on this drop-down box and go to console. And we want to watch this console here as our server runs. And we want to see it connect to the server. Here we go, that's connected. Object is not an error. Don't worry about this message. I don't know what it is, but it's not an error. It looks like an error because it's in red, but it's not. All right, our server is connected. Now let's open up MongoDB Compass. Click on this, connect to localhost, and we should have a DayZ database added here. And if we click on globals, we should have our MapLink entry here. This is where things get confusing when you're setting this up, and a lot of people struggle with this part, including myself when I first started. I'll show you the easiest way to handle this. So what I recommend doing is click on this copy to clipboard, go to a file editor and paste it in there, and just have a quick look through this. This is the default structure for setting up MapLink. So here we have our servers, we have our arrival points and our departure points. If you want to set up a cost to travel, you can mess around with the currencies, but I'm not going to do that in today's video. We're just going to focus on setting up the servers and free transfer points. So let's start with the first server. That's going to be this server here. So for name, I'm copying over the server ID. For the map, it's going to be Zenarchist Plus. For the IP, it's going to be my local host. For the port, that will be the default value, and that will be the default value. So if I bring up my batch file here, notice I have my port set to 2302. When I run a second server, I need to change that port to something else and add that into here. But for now, 2302 is fine. Query port is my Steam query port, and if we bring up my server DayZ config, that's this setting here, which will not be in your file by default. You'll need to add this. So add this in. This is the default, but when we are linking multiple servers, we'll need to increment this value and have it unique per each server. So now that we have our server interacting with the database successfully, let's set up two servers. So I'm going to come to my root folder here and copy this server, just paste it in there. Now we have two identical servers. I'll name this one Livonia. Come into here, come into server DayZ, change this to Livonia, and change my map name to Enoch. And my Steam query port to 27017. Now I need to come into my profiles, come into UAPI, open this file. All I need to change here is my server ID to Livonia. The server auth stays the same, the server URL stays the same. So now if I shut down this server, I bring up the console, and I boot up my Livonia server, and actually before I do that, I forgot to change my port here. So I need to right click the batch file for this and change my port to 2402. Start that server, start this server. So just to recap, change your port and change your Steam query port on the second server to be unique and different to the first server. So now we have two servers connected and we're retrieving MapLink globals. Once we see retrieving MapLink globals and no errors in here, we're good to go. We're good to start setting up our departure points. So save this file, save this default file somewhere. I'll save it into my server's root folder for now. I'll call this MapLink config.json. And let's add our second server in here. So I'll add a comma there, change this name to Livonia, change the map to Enoch. The port needs to be the same port as my second server and same with this query port. So that was 2402 and 27017. Respawn server, if I set this to Zenarchist, if I die on my Livonia map, then my character respawns on this server on Zenarchist and has to make their way back to the departure point to get back to Livonia. And you can set up multiple servers this way. For example, I had a Sakal server set up as well. And I have all three working on my test server. But for now, we'll focus on just Livonia and Zenarchist to keep things simple. All right, so let's move on to arrival points. I have a example config here that I'll use for reference. Let's set up a transfer between Berezino docks and Topolin River. So I'll copy this text here, come to MapLink config, I'll pin this for now. Notice that the name has to match our departure points. So arrival points will list out the different places we can arrive. Departure points list out the places we can leave from. So this will make sense as we build out our script. So for our first spawn point, this is where our character will spawn when they come to Zenarchist. We need to name our server. This needs to match what is in here. So the Zenarchist server will be our server name. Display name will be the spawn point location, so Berezino. Protection time is how long the player is safe for after they transfer. So I'll set mine to 30 seconds. So the player can't be shot or injured for 30 seconds after spawning in. And this is the position where the player spawns. So what I would typically do is go in game, use admin tools to teleport to where I want the player to show up and paste those values in here. D, I believe, stands for direction, and it's a angle. So between 0 and 360 degrees, I just leave it as 0. Do not touch radius. For some reason, when I set this to a positive number, the character spawns under the map. So I don't bother with radius. I just leave it as -1 or 0. Now before we continue, let's place some objects in the DayZ Editor to use as our teleport and spawn point. So I'm going to bring up regular DayZ, not experimental. Come to mods, you can turn that off. You'll need DayZ Editor and ideally builder items if you want to use static objects that aren't included in vanilla to use as a teleport point. So get these off the workshop, click play, and it will load into offline mode. I'm going to teleport to Berezino docks. Come in here and we'll place a boat at the end of this pier here. So I'm going to want boat. I need to make sure private objects is turned on so that I can see my modded builder items. Let's type in builder boat and we'll use this one here, builder boat small. I'll make it this way and we'll put it up close so that the player can climb the ladder and climb up onto the dock. Let's make sure it's aligned in the water okay. Bring it down a little bit. Let's make sure the player can get out of here. And that'll do for now. If you want to add in some more objects so your character can climb up easier or whatever, then definitely do that. But for now, that's all we need. So now what I need to do is export this. I'm going to use the initC method, but you could use the JSON method if you're more familiar with that. I prefer the initC method. So I'll say Berezino boat, export. Now let's go over to Livonia, Enoch, select, and we'll go to Toplin, and we'll put the boat over here on this dock. So this is where the player will transfer to. Build a boat 9, put it in there, bring it up out of the water, make sure it's not clipping. That's close enough. Obviously take more time with it on your own server. You might need to add in some objects here to climb because the player sometimes is weird about getting out of the boat. I like to put a pallet there, or there's a cool fishing object actually from here, from Sakal, that you can put in. Bring that up a bit. And that looks good. Now the player can walk out. Perfect. So this will be our Livonia spawn point. So file, export, initC. We'll say topple and boat. Export. And we're done. I'm doing a rush job of this, but it'll do. Alright, now that we have our objects placed for our terminals, our teleport terminals, we need to open our documents folder, DayZ Editor folder. This is where those files will get exported. We need to open Berezino boat and Toplin boat. And what we need to do here, or what I plan to do, is use the initC method for spawning in objects. If you're more familiar with the JSON method, use that. It's no difference at all. I prefer the initC method because I know how to read the script. If you're not familiar with Infusion scripting or C coding or any of these languages, stick to the JSON method if you're familiar with it. There's no problem with that. What I need to do is come to my server folder. Now this is my Zenarchist server. So I'll go into Zenarchist plus, initC, Berezino, copy this spawn function, paste it. I'll paste it at the top of my file, Berezino, and then I need to copy this spawn object, line of code, and I need to paste it at the bottom of my main function. So I'll paste it in here before this curly bracket. Now this isn't ideal. I should really tidy this up. I should probably have all these files in their own file with an include tag and all of that advanced stuff, but that's outside the scope of today's video. If you guys are interested in that, let me know in the comments. I don't know how many beginner modders follow my channel, but for those of you who are experienced, you know what I'm saying. Tidy this up. For now, it'll do the job. So that's our Berezino spawn point. Now I need to open the server folder for my Livonia server. Same deal. Enoch, initC, Toplin boat, copy the object spawner function first, paste that in there, and then copy in our spawned objects at the bottom of the main function, which is here. Save those files and we're done. If we load into the game, we should see those boats sitting in those locations, but we won't be able to use them to teleport yet because we haven't finished setting up our MapLink config. So we have the beginnings of our config here. We have a name for our transfer point. We are transferring between Berezino and Toplin and vice versa, Toplin to Berezino. Server name is Zenarchist Berezino. I need to copy this entire spawn point structure, add a comma and paste that in there. Now we have two spawn points. The second one will be to our Livonia server and the display name will just be Toplin. 30-second protection safe zone timer after traveling, so people can't spawn camp you there. We'll put in the spawn locations in a moment. For now, we need to focus on our departure points. These are the objects that we just placed. So for the first one, we'll start with Berezino. Berezino, server name, Zenarchist. Safe zone radius will be 10 meters. Well, I think this is when you enter the safe zone. I'm actually not sure what this does, but we'll just set it to the same settings as up here. 30-second protection time, 30-second safe zone cooldown. Terminal type, this is the important stuff. So if we come into the Zenarchist server, this is our terminal type. This string of text, that is the object name. We need to paste that into here, and we need to paste the exact coordinates of that boat as well. This is our Berezino boat, so we need to copy these coordinates, paste them in here, add a comma at the end of each coordinate, and we're done. Arrival point name is what spawn points this terminal is linked to, and that's up here. That's this name here, arrival point name. So copy that into there. Icon, I'll have a list of icons in the mod folder. I'll bring it up real quick just while we're here. Daemon MapLink icons. This is the list of icons that come with the mod. So I'm going to go with boat. Paste that in there. Transition wait time is how many seconds until the player actually hops worlds. So I'll just set this to 3 for now. Cost is how much it will cost to travel, and currency ID is which currency to reference. So if you set cost to 0, it's free to travel. If you want it to cost rubles or tickets or any other currency that you have on your server, either add the currency in by copying one of these structures and changing the ID and the name and the icon and the item names and values, etc. Or if you want to use rubles, let's say we want to make it cost $100 or two $50 notes or whatever combination of these values can make us travel, you put that number in there. If I wanted it to cost 1 ticket, I'd change the currency ID to 1, and now it'll cost 1 of these to travel. But I'll leave mine as free for now, especially while we're testing. So now we have a one-way departure. We need to add in our Livonia version. So I'll copy all of that, comma, paste that in, change this to Topolin, change this to Livonia. That can all stay the same, that can stay the same. The position needs to change, Topolin boat. This is our object, copy those coordinates and paste them over there. Add in our commas, and we are done setting up our transfer points, except that if we interact with this transfer point, we're going to spawn at the 0 world coordinate, which is not good. Your character is going to die. So for now, what I'll do is copy the boat location. So this is our Berezino boat. I'll paste these coordinates into here. And this will spawn us into the boat, like into the actual boat object, which is not what we want. But this will at least get the config working, and we can update this later. So Topolin coordinates are here. I don't know if I mentioned it already because I had some recording issues, but the D value here is your direction. I'm going to leave mine as 0 for now. It shouldn't really matter. And that should be it. Before we continue and we import this data into our database, let's run a quick JSON validation check. And if Space Cat's watching this, then he knows that I'm a really bad boy with this. I don't do this nearly as often as I should, and I've screwed up my server multiple times with this. So do as I say, not what I do. Always check your JSON values, especially in important mods like this, before you import the data. So it is valid, we're good to go. So now what I like to do is I copy all this, open up MongoDB Compass, if you haven't already. Click on DayZ, click on globals, and this is the MapLink config we need to change. This is where people get confused. This is where I got confused. I thought the JSON config was in the server profiles folder. It's not. It's in the database. So this is where we need to put this file. And by the way, there'll be a example config, this exact example config in the mod folder. So what I like to do, first of all, we need to make sure this number matches object ID. So let's open up this and have a look here. 68136D, 68136D. What we need to do now, well, this is how I do it. There might be a better way. Let me know in the comments if there is, but this is how I've been doing it and it works for me. We need to delete this entry entirely. Delete. Come to our config we created, copy everything, and then go add data, insert document, and paste that document into here. Click insert, and we're done. Our map link should be now set up and working. All we need to do now is I don't know if we need to do this, but I like to do it just to be thorough and to be sure. We need to come into our Universal API Manager, click on System Config and restart the service. That should re-import our MapLink config when we start up the server. So now if I go to my server, start my Zenarchist server and start my Livonia server, I can come into my DayZ launcher, make sure I've added my MapLink mod to my mod list. Make sure builder items is added as well. You can repack that mod, I believe. So if you're going to use builder items, you can throw it into your mod pack if you don't want to, if you have a massive mod list and you want to keep it shorter. But go and check out the mod page for that before you do that. Don't just take my word for it. But these are the mods we need. MapLink and builder items. Admin tools and community framework are optional depending on which mods you're running. I think community framework is required for the MapLink mod as well. But I did update the MapLink mod to work with community online tools. The original mod has a conflict with some old code and doesn't work on the current version of community tools. I fixed that for this mod version. So we need to load into my Zenarchist server. Here we are. And we need to go to Berezino. And there's our boat. Perfect. So we'll teleport here. Let's see if this worked. Drop onto the boat. And there we go. Open departure terminal. So if we've set up all of our config correctly, when I press F, it'll query the server. It's online, perfect. Toplin, it's working. If we click travel, we'll transfer in 3 seconds to the Livonia server. Sweet, it worked. There we go. But notice we've spawned into this cabin which we can't get out of because I set the spawn location to the boat location. So now's our chance to fix that. Let's use admin tools to get out of the boat, and I'll set my spawn point to here. If you wanted to, you could set it on the land. So for example, we could have the character spawn here instead of on the actual boat. I'm going to keep it on the boat because I like immersion. I like the idea of you starting on the boat. Not that this is the most immersive thing in the world, but you know what I mean. So I'll copy my location, come back to Notepad, look for my arrival points. This is where the player arrives. So for Toplin, we want to spawn here, where I just got this position from. Again, I don't know if I mentioned it already because I had recording issues, but don't touch radius. When I set this to 3, I thought it was 3 meters radius in a circle. For some reason, it kept spawning me under the map. So I'm going to leave that as -1. Let's go back to Zenarchist because we're going to have the same issue in Berezino, and we can test if this works going back. So here's our Berezino travel point. Let's go back to Berezino. It's a really cool mod. Huge props to DaemonForge for putting this together. Except for all the bad uses of hard refs and the horrendous code formatting, I'm a huge fan of DaemonForge's work. So if you're watching this, I love you, man, but please, please, please format your code so the humans can read it. All right, admin tools on, spawn on the back of the boat, and let's get this location. So I'll look up the sky, copy that location, Zenarchist Berezino, paste these coordinates in. Again, if you wanted to, you could have the character spawn up here instead of having to climb up the ladder and jump up there or whatever, but that's up to you guys. All right, so now that we've updated our file, we need to re-import it into the database. So this is a good opportunity to show you guys how to update your config if you add more spawn points or more maps and servers or whatever. It's the same process. First of all, make sure these line up. If you delete your database for any reason, these numbers will change. These are unique identifiers, so and they're randomly generated. So make sure these match or you'll have issues, I think. I don't actually know if that's true. I'm just guessing. So numbers still match. Copy all of this, delete this entry, and re-import this document. Insert, remember to restart our system config. You should really shut down the servers before restarting this API. So now let's run one last check to make sure everything's set up correctly, and then I'll wrap up this video by showing you just real quick where to find the relevant information for a CF Tools dedicated machine when you're setting these IPs and stuff up. So bring up my launcher, play. Now I'll show you what happens if you try to log into the wrong server. So my character just logged out on Zenarchist. If I try to log into Livonia now, I'll show you what happens. Because we've set Zenarchist as our respawn server, if a character tries to log into Livonia, the mod will automatically redirect them back to Zenarchist. And if they die on Livonia, they'll be redirected back to Zenarchist. And if they logged out on Livonia and log into Zenarchist, it'll redirect them back to Livonia because that's where their character last logged out. So there you see it's redirecting to the correct server. All right, let's test our new spawn points. Travel back to Livonia and make sure the character can actually move when he gets there. Perfect. All right, everything's set up. That's it. There may be bugs with this mod. I haven't really had extensive testing with it, but it's functional in terms of its code working with what it's intended to do. I don't know, there may be edge cases and issues. If I delete all the old logs here and open up the scripts folder, you'll see there are no error logs for MapLink. There's plenty for admin tools and even community framework, but I fixed all of the issues with MapLink. So the mod should be pretty stable in terms of its code. How it functions, there may be bugs, I'm not really sure. Let's see what happens if I die on Livonia. Let's take a little trip. And try to respawn. And there we go, it's redirecting us back to our spawn server, which again is set up in MapLink config here, respawn server. I'm not sure if you can make it so that you can just spawn on any server and just hop between them at will. I haven't tested that extensively. I'm pretty sure when I did do a quick test, it was bugged. And when I died on Livonia and respawned, it actually respawned me back at my teleport location from when I came from Zenarchist. So if you guys want to make it so it's kind of like more like vanilla, where you can just hop between servers at will, and you're not locked into a spawn server, let me know and maybe I'll try and make a version of this mod that does that. But for now, I'm going to leave things as they are. And that'll do it for this guide. It's a bit complicated, I know. Just rewatch this video, rewatch these steps, and you'll figure it out. It's not rocket science. There's just a bunch of things that need to talk to each other in exactly the right way, or this won't work. I'll leave a config in the mod folder, example config. I'll leave actually two configs. I'll leave one with just Zenarchist and Livonia, and one with Zenarchist, Livonia, and Sakal, which is what I've been running. I'll leave two example configs in the mod folder. So just copy this number out if you need to and replace my example config's number with that number there, and everything else should work okay. Also, don't forget to add your init Cs, don't forget to change your port numbers, and so on. And to wrap up the video, let's have a quick look at a dedicated machine and where to find this information. So here's our Steam query port on Omega Manager, and here's our game port. So these are the ports you would put in, and obviously your server's IP address, you should know that if you're a server admin. Those are the values you need to put into here. So my dedicated machine IP would go there, and the port and Steam query port would be unique for each server here as well. Oh, and in case it wasn't obvious, you need to keep this software running at all times that your servers are running, otherwise you're going to have all kinds of connection issues and desync with the database. So if you're running this on a dedicated machine, maybe put it in your Windows startup folder to ensure it's always running when you restart your server. That'll do it for this video. It's already long enough. Hopefully this makes sense to you guys and can get more of you guys running this cool mod. From what I read in the Discord, there's a ton of people in the DaemonForge's Discord that are struggling to set this mod up. Hopefully this helps. With that said, I'll wrap this up here. I'll speak with you in the next one. Take care, survivors.